What is it and how do you learn to do it? I'm going to show you in this video how I developed my legato playing. I'm going to give you specific exercises, exactly the ones that I did to develop my legato playing to whatever state it is in right now. Okay, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to approach the guitar this way as opposed to this way with the sideways hand. A lot of people default to this sideways sort of grip on the guitar, which is the way your hand is on your arm, so it makes sense. I understand why people do it, but you really have to learn to do that. So that you're parallel, so to speak, to the frets. Another thing you're going to have to do with legato playing is you're going to have to bring your thumb lower on the back of the neck than you would, especially let's say if you were bending. When you're bending, you want your thumb over there for a nice fulcrum, a nice counter weight. So you want that grip, you want your thumb around. But when you're playing legato type stuff, you're going to want to roll your hand forward a little bit so that your thumb is basically going to be just a little bit below the halfway point, the middle point of the neck. So right around there, I'm going to guess. So those two things, you want your fingers squared up, so to speak, or parallel to the frets. You want your thumb lower. You also want to make sure you have a gap between your palm and the back of the neck. I always tell people, imagine you have a little blue bird egg, or a you know, like a gumball, or whatever it is. You know, use your imagination. But you definitely don't want to close that gap, because as soon as you close that gap, it pulls your fingers down, and then you have a lot less mobility. Okay, so I'm going to get right into specific exercises that I use to develop my legato technique. First of all, what is legato technique? Legato literally means tied together. So what legato technique is when you play a succession of notes all tied together and very smoothly executed without picking every note. Or in fact, you're going to pick as little as possible. You're going to use a series of hammer-ons and pull-offs to get that fluidity or that legato sound. So what does that mean? So what that was minimal picking. I only picked whenever I needed to either start the phrase or sometimes to change strings to keep the momentum of the phrase going. Of course, you can put in pick strokes anytime you want if you want to change the phrase. Something like that. Okay, so here's some specific things that I did to develop my legato playing. So once again, I'm going to reiterate. You want your fingers parallel, so to speak, to the frets. You want your thumb a little bit lower on the neck. And you want a nice space between your palm of your fretting hand and the back of the guitar neck. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one. First finger on the first string, 3rd fret, G note, and I'm going to stretch my second finger to the 5th fret, A note. And that's an important thing to do to get used to doing that stretch. And then I'm going to stretch my 4th finger to the 7th fret. And then I'm going to start the momentum of the phrase with one pick stroke. Then I'm going to hammer on my 2nd finger. And I'm going to hammer on my 4th finger. So I'm going to start with the pick, hammer on, hammer on. Of course, you want to go in the other direction as well. Pull off, pull off. Another thing that's important to mention right now is that when you're pulling your finger off, you want to go slightly down. If you come straight off, there's almost no momentum to the note created. But if you pull slightly downward, not too much, you don't want to be sloppy. Okay, so now I'm going to do that phrase. Now once you can get that nice and clean, you want to try, doubling the speed of it. So if you think of 1, 2, 3, 4. that's a good start to getting these phrases going. Now, you want to, of course, do that on all the strings because the angle changes slightly and your approach is going to have to vary a little bit because obviously the sixth string is higher positionally than the first string. So you've got to kind of even roll your left hand forward a little bit more, and that gives you a little bit more, space or area with your fingers. It's not the right word, but I think you know what I'm talking about. So once you've got that down and you've got that to the point that you can pull that off effortlessly, another thing I should mention right now is when you're practicing it, you don't want to get to the point where your hand goes to failure. As soon as you start to feel it slowing down and tensing up, you want to stop and let it rest. Okay, so now I'm going to add another finger. So this is going to be 4 notes per string. And then I'm going to do it ascending like that was, and also descend with it. Again, you want to use something for a time reference. I just tap my foot or get a drum beat going, or you can use a metronome or its distant cousin, the urban dwarf. That didn't really make the subdivision, but in any case. Again, you're going to want to work it gradually down the strings, up positionally, but down in pitch, of course. Now, another thing I want to mention is, as well as all those other things, approaching the fingerboard parallel to the frets, so to speak, again, like I keep saying. Thumb lower, space on the hand. You want to also make sure that your fingers are evenly curved. You don't want to do this. That sort of weird flappy thing, especially with the fourth finger. So you want to make sure that you're hitting on the same part of the pad of your finger. I've really spent a lot of time carefully paying attention to that. Another thing you can do to develop the dexterity between each finger is just isolate each finger. And this doesn't matter where you do it. I'm just going to do 4 frets in a row, any 4 frets in a row. So you're going to go. And then you're going to keep those 2 fingers down. So that was between your first and second finger. Now you're going to go from your second to your third finger. And then your third and fourth finger. So as soon as you start to feel that, you want to let your hand unwind. Now I'm going to show you an example of how to do a longer phrase and something that's actually a bit more musical. I'm going to use a G major scale and I'm going to use a 3 note per string fingering. So I'll show you what that fingering is. That there's a note there that's hit twice. Here's that note. Now I do that that because it just keeps the fingering nice and consistent, and it just makes it easier for me, and I don't think anyone would really know. I mean, I'm not going to play that verbatim anytime anyway. But, okay, so watch. Okay, then I'm going to add some chromatic notes in there, making it more of a 4-note per string thing. Now I'm not going to do that on every string. Now here's an example of some legato things that change direction, because you don't want to just ascend and then descend, you know, up and down, up and down. Okay. So I'll show you what that is. So I'm starting on the 5th fret of the 1st string on the A note, with my 1st finger, and then I'm stretching to the 10th fret with my 4th finger. So that's quite the stretch, but you'll get used to it. And then I'm stretching my 3rd finger to the 9th fret. So what I've got here is 5, 10, 5, 9, 10, 9, 5. Now, to make it even more interesting, I'm going to add a second part to that lick. So I've got this already. Then I'm going to bring my 4th finger back to the 9th fret. Oops. Pull off to the 5th. And then 2nd finger on the 7th. 3rd finger on the 8th. 4th finger on the 9th. And then back down. So the whole sequence is this. And then you can just sort of do ideas like that. I mean, figure out your own ideas and just, you know, extrapolate them all over the guitar. Okay, well, I hope you found some of those things useful, and I'll see you the next time.